Hey guys, and welcome back to the Layah Heilpern show. We have lots going on today. A very exciting guest, somebody who has nearly, I think it's over 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, somebody who is a very good friend. But before we introduce him, I do want to give you a really quick news announcement because this is powered by Icon Plus. So really quick announcement for you guys. So visit me. Icon's COVID-19 compliant visitors management app has surpassed 100,000 users and is now being used by 100,000 businesses across the globe. So this is really exciting. It includes hospitals, Hilton, the Conrad hotels, all in South Korea. So this is very, very exciting. It's a really big milestone for Icon, especially in such a short period of time. So back to Layah Heilpern show. Very excited to announce we have Nicholas Merten. Nicholas, great to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Layah. Thanks for having me. It's nice to catch up.
Yeah, it's good to catch up with you. I don't think we've spoken in a really long time, like a very long time.
Yeah, I think it was probably like pre-COVID. The world's changed so much since then, but what's exciting is, things are obviously getting better, it seems. And, the crypto market's been butting up ever since then. We kind of came out of this bear market we were in back in, early 2019. And it's a really exciting time with everything going on in DeFi. And congrats as well on the news, as you mentioned, for Icon. I've been following Icon since back in 2017.
Yeah, Icon are a pretty interesting one. They're doing some crazy stuff in South Korea. Just every single week, we're hearing more and more news coming out about different partnerships with the government. And I mean, I guess they're kind of just going straight ahead with everything that's going on with COVID. So it's pretty cool. But we haven't spoken in a while. And since we did chat, you founded a whole new company. You founded something pretty exciting. So tell us about DigiFox.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I appreciate it, Liz. So basically, what I've been working on since, I guess, pretty much about when we last spoke was I kind of spotted what was going on in the decentralized finance space for a long time. It's what I wanted to see in the crypto industry because I think finance is really the killer application. So as Ethereum and the decentralized finance ecosystem continue to grow, we went about building a cryptocurrency wallet that abstracted a lot of the complexities of crypto and allowed you to plug into all of the different services that you'd want, whether you were wanting to trade or make swaps into different cryptocurrencies, earn interest on your stable coins or other crypto assets, and being able to send payments to family members and friends across the globe. And that's basically what I went about building. I completely self-funded the kind of like pre-seed stage of the company right when it was getting started. We built out a functioning, minimal viable product, got onto the market, got a lot of people testing it. And now we basically got around 11,000 users in this case who are testing out the application, giving it a go, and giving us a lot of great feedback in this case around the application. So it's been a great journey so far. We're excited to continue seeing it growing, and we're excited to keep plugging in more applications and services into the base of DigiFox.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think, it's really cool just to see people growing in this space, creating new things, innovating, especially, I think, because when you first sort of showed me this whole idea, you were sort of saying, it's something that I've needed, something that I just don't think is available. And for me, I think that's one of the coolest things about crypto, that you actually have the ability to innovate, like things are just moving and you can move with them, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I think my whole kind of thesis on it, Leah, as you mentioned, is it's building something that was fixing the pain points that we struggle with. Like, I mean, I constantly hear people complain in the crypto space that, X company doesn't do a good job, or this kind of industry leader isn't really doing their part. And it's like, well, I mean, we have the resources at our disposal. We have the network effect, the people who are willing to try out these new apps. Let's go out and build it. Let's bring the right people in. And one thing that I wanted to make sure I did is that we brought in a lot of people who weren't traditionally working in crypto. Like a lot of our engineers, our designer, and a lot of the team members who are doing like client success, who are doing customer support and creating content. A lot of them didn't work in crypto before. And over the last few months, they've absorbed all the knowledge they needed. They've been able to build a really stellar product. We have some of the like leading industry security standards where DigiFox is just like any other crypto wallet. It's not holding your funds. And we plug into, again, a lot of these great service providers who do what they do best comparative to what we would do as a company. So I think in that case, it's really been a great journey so far. We even did an equity crowdfunding. So we wanted to try to raise from the community first before we went on to venture capitalists and the traditional kind of raising mechanism. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a learning journey as well.
Yeah, it has been. And also, like, major congrats to you because you've been surviving during this crazy year, right?
Yeah, it's been definitely kind of rough and stuff. I was separated. For me personally, like with my girlfriend, we were separated for a couple of months. She was over in Europe, I was here in the U.S., and for the company as well, we've been all working remote natively, so it's been an interesting time. I mean, I think we're very blessed because we kind of work in a digital space, so it's familiar to us. We can scale it out very well, and of course, as
Hmm.
people have been indoors now, content and education around blockchain has obviously been more in demand than ever. So we'll have to see here, in this case, over the long term, how things go. But I'm very, very excited to see how it grows.
Yeah, it's been a really crazy year. So I want to jump in and talk about the markets. I want to talk about 2020. So you are one of the biggest YouTubers out there. You talk a lot about DeFi and Uni Swap and everything that's been going on. So I want to start essentially by asking your thought on the markets, right? So there's a lot of red across the board. We talk about Bitcoin sort of leading the alts, right? So if Bitcoin fails, we say everything else is going to fail. If Bitcoin runs, ETH will run. So what is going on with Bitcoin? We had the halving. Everybody sort of expected, I would guess by the end of 2020 for Bitcoin to have done, I don't say better, because I personally am still very bullish and I think it's doing great, staying above 10K. But I just kind of want your thoughts. Is this right? Did you expect it to be higher at this point? What do you think?
Yeah, one thing that I've emphasized throughout the channel, and I actually just did a video on it yesterday, is to actually look out of all things at gold for inspiration for how Bitcoin's price is going to move. So gold, for example, right, for many years when central banks were printing excessive amounts of money, we had all the fundamental case for gold going up in value. The problem is that there really wasn't an actual catalyst in this case to drive gold up as an asset. There wasn't something that actually caused that shift because equity markets were where money had to flow to. There was clear trust in the asset class, and because of that, people weren't looking for alternatives like gold to hedge against massive currency depreciation or traditional institutions. So when we finally back in like kind of like late 2018, early 2019, gold had actually broken out above its line of resistance. And what it did is it actually did something that we see in a lot of assets where it comes down in price afterwards and makes support on that previous line of resistance. Very simple, but long-term technical analysis. And then after that, we
Mhm.
had about, if I remember correctly, I think it was 66 weeks for gold to get from when it made support on that line of resistance up to breaking the all-time highs. And something that I want to emphasize to people is that was around a 50-55% move. But the thing is that Bitcoin, in order from this point to get to its all-time highs, it's around 20K in this case. You're going to have an even bigger move than 55% that's going to be required. And along with that as well, the time frame in this case could be up to 66 weeks. It could be shorter. So what I always tell people is like take the most conservative estimate here, like the most practical, kind of low expectation kind of outcome. You believe Bitcoin's going to go to 20K. In that case, I would say that at a maximum, it could take up to 66 weeks. It could be shorter. It could be something like 33 weeks. I think somewhere in that range is a very fair assessment. And that is going to lead us into a time frame, if we're even doing that shorter term time frame of 33 weeks, where at the earliest, Q1 of 2021 is when we're going to be breaking back to those all-time highs. So it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that we're around this range that we're at right now, around 10,300 to 1,500 for Bitcoin. And the last thing I would say as well to keep in mind with just Bitcoin as an asset is a lot of people talk about kind of a 4-year cycle. I personally
Mhm.
disagree with this pretty extensively because if you look at
Yeah.
BLX, which is like the longest index for Bitcoin, you can actually see that from bottom to top for each cycle, we add about a year's worth of price action. It's usually 11 to 13 months extra with each cycle. So that's going to leave us with a new all-time high peak, most likely in November of 2022, almost stepping into 2023.
You say early 2021, right? When we talk about giving it X amount of weeks, you said 30 weeks, 60 weeks, whatever it is. But do you think it's a matter of sort of seeing an actual run at that point? Because obviously that's sort of what we're not really seeing at the moment. Or are you talking actual highs? Or is that 2022 you see it?
Yeah. So that basically that projection of 33 to 66 weeks, that's when we're expecting to break to new, like break above 20K. So we're now starting to
Okay.
charter into new all-time high territory. My November 2022 target, not to throw too many numbers, but this one would be like where Bitcoin sets the new kind of 20K peak for Bitcoin, which I'm basically estimating it's going to be somewhere in the ballpark between, and again, I know this is a very wide range, but 100 to 200K. And the reason I leave such a big room of leeway in that case is because no one knows the kind of momentum that we're going to see here for Bitcoin. We've seen, I remember in the last cycle, I thought, oh, 10K, easily the target for Bitcoin. And I basically started to take some profits in that case. And then luckily I held some still because it just kept climbing and climbing and climbing to 20K. So it's fascinating to see how kind of the wave of both retail and institutional capital can completely change the dynamic for price and our current expectations. So those are some kind of estimates that I have here. But above all, I emphasize to people, have your expectations as low as possible if you're a hodler or you're kind of focusing on the long term. And let it be that you get surprised and things actually happen in a quicker fashion in the long run. But yeah, I think you're right, Layah, as you said earlier, Bitcoin is an asset. It's still performing great. It's still one of the best performing assets over the last year and a half. So I think in this case, I feel quite comfortable being positioned in crypto the way that I am.
But it's really interesting because, on Twitter, that's where you and I first connected. A lot of people, there's a lot of dislike towards Bitcoin. And people are often sort of saying, when you sort of say something positive about Bitcoin, there's a lot of repercussions, I would say. A lot of people sort of turn around and sort of say, oh, that's so ridiculous. It's old technology. But, you're still here saying highs of hundreds, thousands, whatever, give it 2 years. So why are there such different opinions? Like, what is going wrong here? Why can't we just sort of agree, that Bitcoin has value? This is what its value is, math, code, and so on, right? Limited supply. This is sort of just like science, maths, rather than like opinion. Do you know what I mean? Like, why can't we agree on these things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's two dichotomies here where you kind of have two different camps that have formed. I think there's been a very big disparity. And as someone who's been building on Ethereum, I've seen it firsthand, the kind of sense of maximalism between both camps on either side and kind of an isolation. But the ironic thing is, like, I constantly look at it, and to me, it's like it's us shooting ourselves in the foot, to put it simple. For example, yeah, I know exactly why are we doing it. I think more than anything, people are constantly afraid of either side removing the need for one another. And I really don't think that's the case. So I can give you like a great example, right? I've been building on Ethereum. So I think that Ethereum, no doubt, is the leader in like decentralized finance in the sense of like financial applications, earning interest, being able to make decentralized swaps. It's clear right now, like it's the platform where I've interacted with the most tools, just not even trying to look from a bias, just from what I've experienced.
Yeah, it's there. No, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah, but in the case of Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin's monetary schedule, its monetary policy, is much more favorable than Ethereum. There are some proposals for Ethereum to actually burn some of its supply to become actually like deflationary, but these are all just kind of theoretical at this point. I think Bitcoin, even if Ethereum, completely mimicked Bitcoin's monetary policy, I don't think it'll ever reach the network scale of Bitcoin as a kind of safe haven or safe and haven asset or something that could be compared to a digital gold. It takes time to build brand recognition like that. And I think Bitcoin being the first cryptocurrency, being as consistent as it has been, it will probably hold that title for a very long period of time, if not forever, in the crypto space. So I think in that case, that's why, I mean, you can be all about DeFi like I am, and crazy about Ethereum as an asset. But I also really love Bitcoin in the sense that I think that, there's no asset that is guaranteed to get to that $1 trillion market cap more than Bitcoin. And yeah, sure, maybe, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think that's a great, I hope overall, it's seen as a good perspective because, I'm an investor at the end of the day. I don't want to let my biases get in the way of what's going to happen in that case or where I put my positions in the market.
Yeah, you can't be emotional about it. 100%. You have to look at the facts and you have to sort of say, okay, well, I'm going to choose Bitcoin because of X, Y, and Z. But I think you make two huge points there, which really get me. I made it the other day, got yelled at, right? But I stand by it. Household names matter, right? So, one of the main, okay, look, like, let's talk about Bitcoin's value from a math and code perspective. Let's put that aside just for a second. I definitely agree with you in that, it is the first, it has that recognition. And whether or not we sort of think Bitcoin will be the global currency or will be the current, whatever it is, I still think it's the currency which will bring about mass adoption in that it will just, in that marketing works, right? Like it's so far ahead on so many other than many of the other coins. Now, if you look at Ethereum, for example, this is my second question to you, because somebody actually explained to me, which I thought was pretty nice. They said that Bitcoin would be digital gold and Ethereum is like Amazon. And do you know what? I'm gonna give a shout out to the guy that said that. So it's the CEO of Altcoin Buzz, Shash. Everyone, if you're not following him, he's great. Follow Shash. Yeah, he's amazing. He's brilliant. So Shash said to me that Ethereum is basically like Amazon. And to me, I was just like, that's brilliant. Like, that makes sense. And it already has that recognition as well, because I guess there are a lot of different protocols that are trying to do the same thing, but they're not going to really get there just because they don't have that same recognition, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a network effect. I mean, the reason Amazon is so dominant in that example that Shash brought up, it's a good point, Layah. Like, the reason why Amazon is so dominant is because it has a network to pretty much everything you need. It started off obviously shipping off books. It did one thing, and now basically you can get everything from Amazon. Content, you can actually get some services from Amazon. They're experimenting in every avenue, and this is why Amazon became such a dominant, almost kind of like, kind of tech monopoly in the sense to be able to service all these different things. But to a point you brought up earlier, I think it's so true. Like, overall, like, in the broader sense of the crypto space, I don't think if I were to give people the option, like, hey, do you want Bitcoin or do you want Ether? I think most people are still going to take Bitcoin, and it's simply because of brand recognition and network effect. Now, Ether, you could say the exact same thing about Ether compared to those other protocols you mentioned, that they might even have way better. They might have way better tech. Maybe, as you mentioned, Icon. You could have
like Tomo Chain.
Blockchain, yes, Tomo Chain. Yeah. You could have all these different networks. And the problem is that they don't have a means right now. At least we haven't seen it. I know there's some that are working towards providing better developer resources. There's no way you're going to be able to capture Ethereum's kind of network of developers at this current moment. At least I just haven't seen anything like that, unless you make the transition extremely simple. So yeah, I think in that case, that's a very clear point there, Layah. Like, and above all, for cryptocurrency assets, the one thing is, like, for DigiFox, for example, we don't try to toss Ethereum or Bitcoin or Litecoin at people right away. The first thing we kind of service ourselves as is a new age finance app. And the first thing that a user is going to see is a way to deposit from their bank into stable coins. We want it to be familiar. We want them to have dollar-backed stable coins in this case. So it feels exactly familiar. It's like you're moving $10,000 from your bank to $10,000 in DigiFox. And now, then we can say, hey, you want to earn higher rates of interest on your savings? You can do that through our providers. You want to be able to buy cryptocurrencies? You can do it through our on-ramp providers or our decentralized exchanges. And we just kind of make it seamless with whatever a user needs in that case. And I think that's the way we have to go with crypto. We can't sit by and say that it's perfect right now, but at the same time, giving them that option where you get them in the door first to a system where they have every option. So you don't need to depend on their commercial bank giving them the opportunity to buy Bitcoin or buy crypto in any capacity. They can do it now because it's from their own interface under their own control.
I love it. And that's sort of just, when you say relying on like commercial banks, it sort of just throws me back to, what was it, like 2 months ago when banks got the green light to sort of hold your crypto. I hated that so much. Like, it kind of just really got me at my core. I was just like, but we're here to get away from the banks. It just kind of threw me. But anyway, I want to ask you actually, I want to talk about the US presidential election because it's coming up. And elections always affect the markets, whether it's traditional markets, whatever it is. Bitcoin really isn't a non-correlated asset. We've seen how it's correlated. So first question for you is, how do you think, I guess, the whole virus, the whole pandemic has affected the price of markets and Bitcoin? And then secondly, how do you think the presidential election will affect it?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So on the virus in this case, I think it had its largest effect when there was absolute peak fear and uncertainty. So I can remember, like, when I was back it was in early March, I was visiting to talk to a few investors for DigiFox at the time in New York City. And bear in mind, I was in New York City during like the peak set of fear, and you could start to like walk through the streets and you would hear people just like kind of like on the phone talking about it. It was like you could tell throughout the day it got worse and worse. And I was simultaneously watching the market because this was when we had I think it was Black Thursday or Black Tuesday, whenever we had a crazy sell off in the market. Where Ethereum had its worst day, Bitcoin had its second worst day in history. So for me, it was like, this is like, oh my God, this is absolutely terrifying. But luckily, since then, Bitcoin's actually rebounded since central banks have printed a ton of money. I think with the prolonging of the economic effects of the virus, I don't like to look at it as a positive investment thesis, but I do believe that if central banks keep printing, it is just going to push. It's not so much that there's excess amounts of liquidity, because originally that could just go into stocks in this case. But what you see now is you're getting a lot of money that's in the bond markets traditionally, that's usually kind of hedging on risk, that's now actually getting pushed out of the market. A lot of that value is going to be pushed out because interest rates are going to turn negative in the US very soon. They've already done so in the UK with the Bank of England. And along with that as well, you also have the excessive printing of money, which is penalizing people from the small yield that they were already getting in the first place. So you have negative yields, you have excessive printing. You're going to probably be moving some of that capital outside of bonds, and it has to go into a lot of different niche markets. I think actually Chamath hit on this recently. Chamath, who has previously worked at Facebook and is now one of the major hedge fund managers that a lot of people follow, he put up this point where we should be focusing on a lot of alternative or niche markets, and crypto is one of those. And I think that that's exactly what you've seen, where Bitcoin's gone from, you know, the rock bottom at 3K when everyone was panicking, up to around 10 to 11,000, and we're seeing MicroStrategy acquiring Bitcoin. You're seeing Grayscale getting peak institutional demand for their ETNs that they have for cryptocurrency assets. I think these are the kind of early warning signs of it. But the thing too that people need to understand is that this stuff takes, you know, a year to 2 years to really show real ramifications. It takes time for people to make these moves. And overall, I think, you know, above all, there's not any other asset class that I want to be positioned in during this time of COVID. I think that there's a lot of great room for crypto to continue being seen as a hedge, especially if it gets above 20K. Now, you brought up as well the question about the elections.
Yes.
You know, interestingly enough, I don't really know how to feel it, Layah, because, like, you know, I've come. It was funny when I was in Europe over the last few months. I kind of was disconnected from everything, but when I've come back, I've seen that it's still the same kind of division. Now we're getting towards the election season where it's a bigger topic. And I really don't think there's going to be too much of an impact on crypto in this case. And the reason why is that, as much as it is correlated, I think that the bigger dynamics here for Bitcoin is, I don't see that any results of the election leading towards a big buy side activity or sell side activity of crypto, which would lead price one way or the other. Maybe you'll see maybe $100, $300 move in Bitcoin one way or the other. You know, who knows what side is going to lead that to happen. But I think in that case, like, overall, it's kind of up in the air. There's usually, it tends to be that when there's very fear-based macro events, like when we had in Iran, for example, back it was back a year ago, when we had the potential World War III that everyone was talking about.
That was so ridiculous. I can't. Sorry.
Yeah,
I need a second. Yeah, sorry. Go on. That was ridiculous.
No, it was pretty crazy, and it was like everyone was panicking, and you could start to see Bitcoin bumped up a bit because people are like, "Hey, you know, it's a hedge," you know. But I'm curious to hear, like, from your take, Layah, like, from those two topics you mentioned, like, do you have a feeling that it's going to swing one way or the other, from like continuation of the virus to the presidency, or what's your take on it?
Yeah, let's do it. So, I mean, I don't think so. Bitcoin is not like, okay, people talk about it being like this non-correlated asset. I absolutely don't think that's the case. I definitely think what happens geopolitically affects the price of Bitcoin, right? As you mentioned, with the whole Iran thing, we saw a little bit of a spike. You know, with the Hong Kong protests, I think, what was it? When it was at its peak nearly 2 years ago, we saw a spike, or a year and a half ago or something. My view on the whole COVID-19 thing is pretty simple, right? So back in March, when things were extremely unknown, there was a lot of uncertainty. It makes absolute sense that Bitcoin would drop down to 4K. For me, there's no shock there, but I think it's so powerful that it comes back up and it stays above 10K. Like, a lot of people complain about this, but for me, this is really, really powerful. I mean, we've already seen, for me, how the dollar is, how the pound is, the euro. None of them are doing particularly great. Right, the pound is just getting weaker and weaker. The UK don't actually have any negative interest rates just yet, but they are considering it.
Right.
I don't think they. Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, I think that they're considering it. So this is concerning. So for me, like you said, you know, the worse it gets from an economic perspective, with the UK, with the USA, we will look to deflationary assets like Bitcoin. I 100% agree. As for the election coming up, I really don't think it's going to have that much of an effect. I just don't. Everyone's like, oh, you know, markets go crazy during these times, and they do. But, you know, if you're talking about, okay, a $300 rally, you know, up or down, to me, that's not an effect, because that's just normal, you know, when Bitcoin
that's
is
an everyday
stable.
Crypto.
Yeah, right. So like when Bitcoin is stable, that's weird. So if Bitcoin goes, you know, up by whatever, like $300, to me, it's nothing. I don't see this as an effect. So honestly, I don't think there's going to be, I don't see there being much of an effect at all. But I want to move on a little bit actually and chat to you a bit about DeFi, because DeFi has been crazy over this last year. But my main question is, do you think DeFi is going to be something a bit like ICOs of 2017, whereby it's this big thing, people made a lot of money, people lost a lot of money, it was fun, it was cute, whatever. Or do you actually think this is just the beginning? Because realistically, this is still the experimental stage. So we're talking a lot about NFTs at the moment, which we'll get to. But in terms of DeFi, is this just the beginning, or do you think we kind of hit its peak?
Yeah, I think it is just the beginning, Layah, and that's both a good and bad thing. You know, with any kind of wave of innovation, you have a ton of companies. It's almost kind of a wave of speculation at the end of the day, because the vast majority of it is not going to be very innovative, or it's not going to be something that sticks around long term, like we saw with ICOs. I think the failure rate will be a lot less than ICOs, because ICOs were just anything goes on a blockchain. Whereas in this case, we actually have a little bit more of a specific focus of finance. And I think with you know, when you take finance versus all categories that try to be tossed at blockchains, you're going to get a much higher success rate, because blockchains do a really good job of keeping low level data for very important data, right? So being able to keep the record of transactions, allowing you to interact in a permissionless way, this all goes into the root of finance. But at the same time, you know, as someone who's been building in DeFi for the last few years, and I've been supporting Kyber Network since 2017. I've been following, you know, Aave, or, you know, ETHLend back in the day, and Compound, and all these protocols, and many of them are already integrated into DigiFox. I got to tell you, Leigh, it leaves such a stain on my heart personally, seeing the space grow in such a fundamental way, and then seeing the craze around yield farming, seeing the craze around ridiculous interest rates in yield farming, and also just the kind of instant switch to NFTs, and not really like trying to be kind of rational about it. I think that, to me, is not what DeFi is. It's not that those things can't be DeFi. It's not that there can't be people who seek out yields that are higher than usual, maybe a little bit more risky. And it's not that NFTs can't be, you know, a great thing. But I don't think people are assuming they're assessing the risks of these systems overall. When you lend out to Compound, for example, when you lend your assets on Compound, it's very realistic yields that are way better than what you can get at a bank on your stable coins and other digital assets. And at the same time, you're actually heavily protected in this case, because it's over collateralized on the borrowing side. Whereas when you put your money in something like Wi-Fi, for example, they have and that's been the big thing, Yearn in this case. If you put it into a Yearn vault in this case, where you're earning like 80, 90%, I don't know what the numbers are now, but it used to be like 80, 90% on top of your Ethereum. The way that it would work, it's very 70% or something crazy.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. And basically the way you would make that yield is you're putting your Ether into a maker contract. So a lot of people don't know that they're actually taking out a loan. So if Ethereum goes down 50%, they lose everything. So say goodbye to the yield and say goodbye to your principal. And then along with that as well, the way that they're making this yield is they're farming governance tokens that are kind of a short term. They're not going to be as hyped as they are right now. And along with that as well, the yield will dry up there. So when the yield starts drying up, you're going to have this really bad dilemma where a lot of people, you know, are probably selling ETH in this case, getting out of that yield in that case of the Yearn vault. And you're going to start to have a really negative effect on Ethereum, where all this kind of inflow came in originally. But along with that, if it gets worse enough, it goes below 50% from where a lot of those contracts or the vaults were open, it's going to be a massive margin call event. And that's something that, again, I don't think people really realize in that case, or assess as a risk for these protocols.
You make an interesting point, though, that it sort of puts a stain on your heart in terms of, you know, there being something there pretty decent when it comes to DeFi, but things like yield farming, things with these insanely high interest rates, which are, of course, highly risky naturally, I guess sort of like take the attention perhaps away from DeFi, what it can do, what it's supposed to do. And I guess it sort of makes it into something that, I don't know, it kind of loses some form of credibility, especially when you start sort of hearing all these supermarket type tokens coming out. And do you know what I mean? And I think especially, I know Twitter just happens to be the heart of crypto, really, because it's where we can all connect. But I know there's a lot of people who aren't in crypto, but they see what goes on and they're just sort of like, this can't be right. This can't make sense. So do you feel that things like yield farming have sort of taken credibility, or not so much credibility, but have sort of like put maybe a potential bad kind of name overcast on DeFi? Is that what you're sort of saying?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's like killing DeFi or anything, but I will say, Layah, like I think you probably agree with me. Trying to tell someone to get into Yam token and chase token,
no way.
it's like what are we talking about here? Like what kind of image does this, like, the thing I hate is that, like, if we were just saying we're just experimenting, having fun and speculating, I would say, hey, at least everyone's being honest at that point. But people were saying we're building better finance. We're revolutionizing the financial system. We're becoming the same traditional financial system that, you know, caused the 2008 recession, that caused previous recessions. When we take these kind of speculative gambles and push code that's unaudited on chain, this is completely off of what's traditional in the blockchain space, in the open source community. And quite frankly, like, I can just tell you, like, I personally have no, you know, urgency to integrate any of these things into DigiFox, because for me, I want to build something that's familiar for everyday people. If we really want to reach that, you know, 100 million or billion users across the world who need crypto right now, you're not going to want to toss Yam finance or sushi and all these things at people. What you want to give them is a way to say, hey, you have money in a bank, you want to take it over to this platform and start earning interest, or get exposure to digital assets, maybe even earn digital assets and not have to spend any money. I think things like that are really what's going to bring a lot of people into this space. And it is a bit sad, Layah, that, like, I mean, it just seems like the simpler and the more stupid you keep it, like, the more successful and, like, you know, in the short term that it is, and people just go rampantly speculant on it.
Oh, straight up. Like, I absolutely agree with you on that. I think we overcomplicate things hugely. And I got to be super honest with you and our audience as well. Like, I think our biggest problem with mass adoption is ourselves. Like, people, look, like, I also appreciate that, like, you know, things need to scale. 110% things need to be able to scale. You know, we're waiting for Ethereum 2.0 and so on. But I think overcomplicating something is just the worst way to do this, right? To get new people into the space. And I think, and also coming out with crazy risk reward situations like we're talking about, yield farming and so on, is going to be one of the most off-putting things. But I also want to chat to you then about Uni Swap, because I know you've done some videos on that. What are your thoughts? Did you give it a go? And did you get your 400 uni?
Yes, I did. So I was, you know, I think in total I claimed 3 wallets in this case. I happened to trade between my DigiFox wallet and a few MetaMask wallets. So I was very happy in that case. I was very blessed. But overall, you know, I think here's the thing about Uni. I think Uni proved a very good example of how you can do token distribution right by giving 15% of the supply. Of course, maybe I'm a bit biased because I received some, but I think in this case, giving tokens to people who supported your technology before the issuance of the token, I think is a fantastic way to give back to the community. And outside of that as well, you know, I think that the idea of building governance, you know, overall having a governance token is probably the most speculative element. I really don't know if these, you know, the hype around governance is really going to play out in the long run, but I can see at least that there is some utility with having the governance power on top of Uniswap, which is one of the most, it's not only the most valuable DeFi project by total value locked up, but along with that as well, is where people make major swaps, in this case for cryptocurrencies. I've been using Uniswap as well. It's by far the best DEX that I've worked with in the sense of liquidity and the sense of, like, a seamless experience. And that's why we integrated it into DigiFox. That's natively how people can make swaps within the app. So overall, I think it's fantastic. The Uni token is definitely an example in the right direction versus the, you know, if you just think about, Layah, like, take it back to 2017, like a couple years back, where the standard was the team gets 50% and investors get 50% of the token, or like, you know, basically 80-90% between those two groups, and then, you know, maybe 10% for community development or this or that. Now we're starting to see Uniswap is putting up massive allocations of its tokens, more than 50% in this case, directly for the community. And I think that that's a very good step in the right direction. And I can tell you, we had a lot of users who made swaps who happily claimed their tokens, and it was so nice to see how happy people are getting to have some stake in that system early on.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. You make a great point. You know, because a lot of the time when an ICO, you know, when there's an ICO or whatever, at the end of the day, you know, of course you can read up on the project, but you still are taking a gamble. It's actually such a pleasure to see a company sort of do it the other way around, like you said, and reward the people that gave it a go, believed in them, you know, whatever it is. So how do you think Uni's gonna fare then? Because, like, let's be honest, there are what, like 6,000 different cryptos at this point, including tokens and whatever. And every single project has a token or a coin or whatever. And some of them just have them for the sake of it, to keep you on their ecosystem. Some of them have really crappy use cases. I'm not even gonna lie. Some of them, I just much rather like get Bitcoin as cash back, or I'd rather get whatever it is, you know? So how do you think Uni will actually do? Do you even need it? Do you see what I mean here?
Yeah. I think, again, Layah, like, it's, you know, this idea of decentralized governance, or DAOs, or, you know, decentralized autonomous organizations, it is still highly speculative at this point. The idea of a DAO sounds, like many things in crypto, great on paper, but, you know, a DAO can only be as good, just like any government, as the people who make it up. In this case, who make up that governmental system. You can have the best governmental structure; it doesn't matter. It's always going to come down to the people who make the calls. In this case, that's why we have a government. So in this case, I'm still highly speculative of where, you know, comp token or uni token is going to do, in the sense of like actual fundamental utility. I have no doubt. I would agree with you 100% on that. I don't think there's any clear, you know, defined utility outside of maybe what they've mentioned in the kind of white paper, or what they mentioned on their website with the launch of the token. But I will say this, from an investor and trading perspective, I have not sold my Uni tokens yet for all 3 wallets that I was able to claim.
Oh, wow.
And I'm definitely looking to add probably more, because I know Uniswap in this case is a great protocol. It works. I know Hayden and the team, like, you know, I've been following them for a while. They've done a phenomenal job building something valuable. Their token, you know, metrics are much better than that of a lot of other DeFi protocols. And at the end of the day, as a trader, I know this: if the market is excited about the underlying protocol, utilizing it, and the token has some tie to it, it's going to probably do well. You know, again, I think above all, like, this whole DeFi space, I kind of shouting it through the roof since 2019 with oracles and enterprise blockchain and DeFi. But finally, we're starting to see it materialize. And I think that this is just the beginning of the broader crypto cycle. So if you just want like a trading investment perspective, again, never financial advice, but just for me personally, like, I think that this space is going to continue to climb. And I think maybe over time, what we will find, Layah, is like it'll figure itself out. We'll figure out what the utility is for this. Maybe it's not just a governance token. Maybe it allows certain utility on the platform. Maybe you can pay. One thing I've thought about is using like a token like that to be able to pay for fees on the native network in that case, or like liquidity provider fees and stuff like that. So, I mean, we'll see what happens in the long run, but I'm very excited to see how people will continue to experiment on top of what's already been launched.
And speaking of screaming things through the roof, the last topic I wanted to chat to you about was NFTs, because NFTs, like you said, it's sort of been this overnight kind of change, this overnight kind of hype over it. I've heard for a long time that it's coming. My quick opinion on this would be that I definitely think there's definitely a market for it. It's definitely going to become a thing, if you want to put it that way. And the main reason is, somebody asked me, and I sort of said, well, the same way everything has moved online, whether it be dating or socializing or working, you know, it's just moved online. I see no reason why things like collectibles and so on, not just in gaming, but in the wider world, will move online. Whether it be like, you know, you've got the same way like socializing, you have Twitter and people sort of speak through Twitter. We communicate through Twitter. I think we will have collectibles and objects that are ours, and we have like this virtual room for them, and so on and so on. So not just gaming, but I see it going bigger. But firstly, what is your opinion on that? And also, yes, it can become there could be a market for it, and there obviously is a market for it, but do you think it will actually be a craze like we saw with DeFi?
I don't think it's gonna, I think NFTs, if I were to say anything like they're kind of like a fragment of DeFi, like a digital asset collectible. I think that, we've kind of seen it blend into the broader term of DeFi. DeFi is so wide reaching, it's lending applications, it's trading applications, and derivatives and all types of financial services, insurance. So in this case, I'd say NFTs are another category in there. So I don't think it'll be ever as big as DeFi. But I will say, as you mentioned, the potential I see for it as a market in this case is that if you can build up a big enough network effect where major companies and brands are producing, and in-game digital assets, like you mentioned, is one, but also different types of collectibles. If you start to see artists and people take a liking to it, then in that case, there will be a market. If the people, for example, the reason people collect baseball cards is because, they're the players that they enjoy. If, the major sports leagues in this case start creating cards and start creating collectibles in these formats, people are going to probably take them, just like they would, a paper card. I mean, really, if you think about it, I have a baseball card in my hand, right? What gives that value, right? It's a piece of paper with a printing on it. Well, it's that it's a actual certified collectible, and that's where I think again NFTs can have some value, is just being able to authenticate ownership, over that specific collectible. Sure, you can make the argument, oh, I can find photos of it online. Well, yeah, I can find a photo of my baseball card as well online, or a photo of the actual baseball in that case. But it doesn't matter. Like in this case, as you mentioned, we've digitized everything at this point. And I think personally for me, I don't get it too much. Like I'm not one to really buy collectibles too much, but I know that there's a market of people out there. That many people don't get crypto, but I'm a crazy, nutbag for loving crypto. And I think we both are. We're crypto fanatics at the end of the day, and we don't make sense to the world. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just talk about like that latter bit in terms of like cards. For me, it's just such a no-brainer. Because even like now we see kids using oh gosh, wow, someone's calling me. How strange. Let me just decline that. That's very strange. Came through on my laptop. Yeah, even as we see kids using iPads now, right? And a lot of you may agree with it or disagree with it, but sort of like toys, entertaining children is now done in a digital way. So if we sort of say, okay, well, kids play with cards. Do you have top trumps in the US, or is that a British thing?
Yeah.
Oh, you do have it. Okay, it's not just a British thing. Great. So, as a kid, we were always playing with top trump cards. And a part of me is like, well, I guess kids don't have access to electronic devices at such a young age, but they do. So things like that, for me, it's just an obvious kind of evolution, a natural evolution, moving things like that online. I mean, I used to play with Brat dolls and Barbies. Actually, I didn't play with Barbies, but I played with Brat dolls. And for me, that will just go online as well. Like I don't see.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. I mean,
yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, sorry. There's a bit of connection drop. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Layah. I think there's nothing that's going to stop it in this case. Like if there's enough companies doing it, I think that the biggest thing we have to look for, and this is something we've considered at DigiFox. We're not 100% certain on it, but like having a real interface in a market where you can actually like manage these assets. I know OpenSea does this, where there's actually a secondary marketplace where you can sell your digital assets for a certain amount of crypto. It's usually denominated in ETH. But yeah, I think for us, we would love to, possibly support that in that case. We just want to, for us, I think it's a matter of waiting for that killer kind of like NFTs. It's similar to like what CryptoKitties were in 2017, where there's actually a big enough network effect where there's a market for it. You could sell your collectibles. I think when you can make a liquid market around collectibles and get enough users into one network, that's going to be the game changer in that case. It's really going to scale out this market to something that people are really interested in. Because right now it's a bit spontaneous. You see like a piece of art, for example, that someone puts up and they charge 10 ETH for it, and you got to sit there and think like, hey, what does the market think about this? Do they think this is worth $10? Has someone bought this and paid that price already? Or like, what is it? Like, and the thing is, you don't have that data or information to see, has it gone up over time? So I can know if I want to speculate on it or if I think it's overvalued. I think that's what's going to make this like an actual liquid market that people want to trade and get involved in.
I want to get your thoughts. I'm not going to put the comment up because they have a bit of a weird name, but somebody just wrote in the comments, they say, but it's physicality, which gives it protection against duplication. Digital images don't have that inherent protection. I absolutely disagree, right? Because the whole idea is that it's decentralized, it's on the blockchain, it sort of it protects it from, again, let's say Bitcoin or crypto, for example, it protects it from the whole double spending problem. Like, surely that's not even a concern, right?
Yeah, I would say to that remark in that case, physical objects in this case do have a duplication issue. If I, for example, create a duplicate or fake version of a baseball card or even some kind of physical object, that happens in a lot of cases. In that case where people sell like counterfeit goods, things of that sort. Same goes in the sense of collectibles. And you can get, yes, there are certification programs and stuff. I mean, for example, some of my family members collected baseball cards for their entire life and actually just recently sold some of them. But I would say in the sense of a verifiable NFT, what you get out of this is, yes, could you see like an image online? Yes. Could you, for example, just have an in-game item and not have it be an NFT on a blockchain? That's, yes, very true. But the nice thing about an NFT is it does give you a certificate on-chain that actually states that you own an asset. And I say that is probably the most valuable aspect of it. Again, for me, I'm maybe not the best to speak on it because I'm not majorly into collectibles. But I will say that that ability to say under my address that Nicholas Merten owns this specific asset. I mean, that's a major thing. I mean, it's not only big for Bitcoin and crypto assets to know that, like, a bank isn't rehypothecating or fractionally reserving my funds out. But along with that as well, same goes for the NFTs. If I want to hold it for the long term and think it's going to be valuable, I want to certify that I have ownership over it. And when I exchange it to someone, they now have ownership over it.
And I think, just lastly, I think like the cool thing about NFTs is that it's so much more than just collectibles, right? Like, I think even at the moment you have domains which are NFTs. I think I've got one. Yeah, I do have one. I don't know. I don't know. I said I think I do have one. So, that's really cool. So that can go up. That can also go up in price. Whether I'd want to sell that in however many years, I don't know. But I think that's super cool. So, Nicholas, I'm going to make you full screen. I'm going to figure out how to do that. Let's do this. Now I'm full screen. You're full screen. Cool. I want your last words, like something and something beautiful. Tell us.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for having me. And I would say, above all, the thing that I would say to people in this space right now, where the market is right now with all the kind of excitement going on, the thing I would say above all is to realize that we are very early on in the cycle. If you're here right now in the crypto space, I've been in the space since like 2016, 2017. I can tell you all that this is very early on in the cycle. We've got a lot more innovation coming in the sense of decentralized finance. It's going to start becoming a lot more practical. The best thing you can do is just cut out the noise and focus on the long-term vision. As we talked about earlier with Bitcoin, I really believe that we're at a point now where we can start to prepare in the next few quarters to break above those all-time highs and continue the rally. And I think Bitcoin will be the best mainstream asset in the sense of performance against gold, against silver, traditional stocks, bonds. So if you're in crypto, you're in the right place. And I think that DeFi is only going to further expand upon that growth and give us all types of new ways to interact with our financial future. So I'm very excited about that. And above all, if you guys are looking for something to tap into DeFi, DigiFox is a portal to that. But outside of that as well, if you're not, and Layah, above all, I mean, it's so great to be here and just get to chat with you as always. It's definitely had been too long since we talked, so I'm glad we made the time to do it.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you also to Icon Plus for kindly powering this. Guys, I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll see you next week. We're ending the broadcast. Bye-bye.